let's get ready to welcome our next set of speakers of the second discussion of the co-working conclave. We're talking about the topic being co-working, winning strategy, emerging business models. Ladies and gentlemen, first up, it's my honor to call upon the session chair, somebody who has over 20 years of experience in operations and property management and currently heads the commercial, retail and emerging business for Property and Asset Management India at GLL, has been associated since 2015 and has spearheaded the management of more than 270 million square feet of area with over 300 clients. I'm talking about the head commercial, retail and emerging business property and asset management India GLL, Audhesh Pandey. Thank you, Mr. Pandey, for joining us. Next up, an internal consultant leading teams executing transformational cross-functional projects that drive infrastructure growth, innovation across all sales and marketing disciplines. Was also the Senior Director Consulting and Performance Services Asia Pacific at Marriott International Hong Kong. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the Senior GM Transformation and Strategy Cowrks, Aryoman Langrana. Thank you, Aryoman, for joining us. Next up, a qualified chartered accountant and an idea to create My Branch, which came to him in 2008. In 2015, My Branch established its first office in Mumbai. And since then, there's been no looking back for the company. Somebody who believes in one area which will change dramatically over the next few years is commercial real estate. With this and much more, let's call upon the co-founder, My Branch, Kushal Bhargava. Thank you, Kushal. Next up, a serial entrepreneur and one of the leading voices in the new generation co-working space providers in India. Focus is on providing spaces that create conducive, functional and inspiring workplaces with a modern aesthetic. We're talking about the founder and chairman, 315 Work Avenue, Managing Director, NestaVera Group, Mehrotra. Manas, a smile would be welcomed. Thank you so much. Well, next up, an architect by profession, somebody who is the founder and chief executive officer for Shared Workspace, aiming at creating the right environments for work. Somebody who's previously worked as a senior architect for Surrey Architects Mumbai and also has worked in Singapore with a boutique architecture firm. We're talking about the founder and CEO of Dextrus, Chhabra. And next up, somebody who's responsible for all the facets of the company's investor relationships, FP&A, along with the responsibility of sales, marketing, real estate acquisition, fundraising, and strategy. Joined this company at the inception in 2015 as a part of the core management team, and since then heads both the demand and supply side functions at this company. We're talking about the Deputy CEO of Awfis, Sumit, Lakhani. With that, Audhesh, all yours.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah, hi. So, thank you. 35 minutes starts now. Yeah. Thank you, Bhavna, for a nice introduction. And thanks to Realty Plus for organizing this exciting session on co-working, winning strategy, and emerging business model. A concept, idea, and industry almost non-existence in late 90s and early 2000 has taken up the big shape in terms of the growth. I think now it is almost 40 million square feet this flex space business, and with providing almost 7 lakh workstations. And the growth which we have seen in last, during the pandemic, there was this pitfall, and this was also the segment which was not unaffected. I think there were almost 20% shops were shut down in terms of the co-working, flexible working spaces. But After that, it has picked up quite well. And the kind of growth we are seeing, I'm talking about currently it is 40 million square feet with almost 7 lakh workstation, which is expected to grow with the CAGR of 25% plus. That means almost 15 lakh workstation in next 3 years. And with the almost 80 million square feet, which is currently 40 million square feet space from the flex spaces. And there are growth opportunity. At the same time, there are challenges and innovations which need to be done to take this industry ahead. I'm joined with the elite panel who has been the founder. They are working at the senior position, leadership position in the co-working flex spaces. And they are going to address some of this pertinent questions, some of the major these questions and opportunities which this industry is facing. I have first question to this panel, and I'll request Robin if you can address this. How the pandemic has impacted, because as I said that it has impacted almost all the segment of the real estate, and co-working was also not unaffected this segment. So how it has affected the co-working space, and what are the lessons we have learned, what are the practices we are following after the pandemic? Robin.
Yeah, thanks, Audhesh. I think the pandemic obviously wasn't fun for anybody, personally or professionally. Everybody had to figure out how to stay above water, and I constantly say that it was a 100-year flood for the real estate industry. I think it's come and gone. Hopefully, we don't have another one of those for 100 years. But I think the pandemic really made us focus on thinking about what's important and spending the right time on the right things. I think in the beginning there was a strong focus on is commercial real estate kind of see no one come back, and that work from home is kind of here to stay. And there were a lot of discussions in those 2 years, especially virtually. And I think we were very confident at that time that, look, it's going to mold it. It's not going to absorb it and kind of make it disappear, because there needs to be a mix, especially in cities like Mumbai and you know, other dense cities. Space is a luxury, and you kind of need space to segregate. So we were confident that it would come. The question was of when rather than if. And I think what we saw was during the pandemic, there was a lot of cautious behavior, but towards 2021 at the end, we started seeing companies really get invigorated and come back with a lot of very different requirements, whether it was restructuring, resizing, or having split companies, rotating teams. The requirements just were easier, I think, for co-working and managed office players because we were flexible enough to be able to adapt to that versus perhaps some of the more, you could say, traditional office spaces in that sense because people needed difference. But of course, everybody had to adapt. So you saw that happen in large traditional office settings as well. You had companies, especially, I think one of the major changes that we saw was a lot of Indian companies start to take a lot more of a closer look at co-working, at managed office spaces. Prior to the kind of COVID, I think we saw a lot more international companies already comfortable with that. They were able to take those decisions faster. Indian companies were kind of a little bit more nervous. I think COVID changed that very quickly for them. So I think it was a big boon, a big boost. I think everybody here on the panel is probably seeing 100% or 90% occupancy rates, and that proves that that adaptability really helped us deal with it post that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Robin. You would like to add, Kushal?
Yeah. I would like to add, in fact, post-COVID, in fact, the acceleration has been better. In fact, I would say the adoption of co-working has improved, because of hybrid work culture, because of working closer to home. So in fact, I would say a model which has actually come up only post-COVID is the hub and spoke model. So what we've realized is corporates are now open to people working closer to their house, working alternate dates, sometimes once a week, just book the meeting room and come to office. So because of that, there's been a substantial movement of business to the tier 2, tier 3 cities. The movement has been even greater where the infrastructure in terms of internet, internet in terms of other facilities which are there. So yes, post-COVID, COVID as you mentioned was really tough for everyone. But yeah, post had everything good occupancy and there's a lot of change in the model which you're seeing.
Thank you. Thank you, Aryoman. So my next question to you, Manas. How do you think that the traditional office providers will respond to the rising competitions from the co-working spaces? And what changes you seeing the industry as a result of that competitions?
Yeah, thank you. So competition is going to be always there, and it's something which is extremely healthy and well needed for the industry. When we take up spaces, we have competition from a traditional leases, which happens, and then we have competition with other co-working guys, which happens, when the space is being taken up. It's important to, consider, the right strategies, when you're taking up the space. When you're taking up with a traditional lease, our pitches are much more stronger because the services which bring along, the services in respects of community or, technologies, everything makes us much more stronger, as a player to move into the premises, when we go in. But yes, we also have a competition which is very strong with the other co-working players. But I think it's very much needed. Right now, the market has been in a condition where everybody is getting good businesses, and it's extremely been strong, especially the last 1 year. I think probably another 2 or 3 years, when there will be a maturity level coming in, we will see a trend getting set in now. But it doesn't mean that the smaller players will not be there. If you see the developers, there are 5 big developers, and you have those smaller guys also, who have their game. So it's not that the business is not going to be there for those people. Market is extremely huge. If we are saying if the market is going to be 80 million by 2025, it's going to be 100 million by 28. So that's a huge market to capture on. 7 million leases has happened in the last year for the co-working industry. So I think all the numbers are getting set in the right systems. So I don't see it as a problem tomorrow for anybody to face such kind of a thing. It's also important that how do we look as our growth into Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, because that's extremely important. Your clients wants you, if you're doing a good service, if you're providing them good requirements and you satisfy them, I think they want you wherever they grow. So we have to keep growing into new cities and explore new possibilities and options there.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I echo Manas' view, and first of all, good evening, everyone. Sorry I missed that. I think co-working sector is not a winner-takes-all market. So a lot of players will coexist in this segment. What we are doing is a brick-and-mortar physical spaces, unlike a lot of digital businesses. So multiple players will coexist. Let's take an example for hospitality players. There are almost about 25 plus different credible brands in that sector. Across Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities, if you look at, I think there's a space for almost about 10 to 15 credible brands and a lot of local players to coexist and grow at a good pace.
Thank you. Thank you. My next question is to Aryoman. Yeah, hello. Aryoman, my next question is to you. How have the preferences and requirement of the co-working office spaces client has evolved over the years, and how the operators are adapting to be attuned with the customer requirement?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think all of us sort of agree, we've already seen this, that the customer type has shifted. We had traditionally startups, new age, tech, was predominantly what the customer sort of list would look like. But now it's becoming broader. You're seeing, with a lot of the managed offices that are now coming into play, you're seeing larger MNCs. You're seeing sort of companies that traditionally would not look at co-working spaces. So that customer type has shifted. And because of that, I think the requirements have shifted a bit as well. The value proposition still is the most important, but I think what people are now looking for is, given the environment now where most employees are, it's difficult to bring them back into the office, experience-driven, amenity-driven workspaces are going to be super important as you go forward. So the customer itself now wants that kind of that 15-minute lifestyle, right? You want to be able to get from place A to place B to place C within a 15-minute kind of journey. What that means is that if I have to accomplish something that is just outside of my work, grab a cup of coffee or, go to the gym maybe, we want to try and get as much of that or those amenities into the workspace as possible. So it's not going to be just about the desk and the chair. It's going to be about how do you amenitize, how do you build experience, how do you actually encourage people to come back into the office. And that kind of is a big value proposition for the tenant as well, because then they kind of see the value in working with co-working players. Now, the good thing is that we're well placed to do that because co-working has been doing that for a while. It's always been about great design. It's always been about, make sure there's F&B. It's always been about making sure there's a great experience through community building and so on. So that's kind of where we are right now. But in terms of where we're going to go, I think there's a big play from a consulting standpoint as well. So the big question, of course, is how do we address hybrid? We're not really at the stage where we know 100% that this is what hybrid will look like in the future. Is it going to be 2 days a week or 3 days a week? Is it going to be teams coming in together or is it going to be individuals? And I think what co-working players can do is, because of all the data that we collect on a daily basis, we can be well placed to actually advise companies on how to structure their workspaces in the future. And that's the consulting value add-on that I think that eventually will also be another reason as to why co-working becomes sort of a key component of every company's commercial real estate strategy and not just a sort of an interim the way that people are looking at it today.
Thank you. Thank you, Aryoman. Anyone else would like to add on this?
Yeah, I think some of the points that Aryoman just helped jog some of the other thoughts in my mind on this. I think what we're seeing, the consultant part is anyway, what we're realizing as we're making the office spaces for clients, we end up being quite, I think the inputs that we can provide from design or whether it is tech or anything else, help clients actually unleash more potential from the space itself. So the changing client requirements and they're varied. We've addressed spaces where we've built a recording studio all the way to a PAC cooled server system for a bank with international standards in very small spaces and delivery in less than 45 days. And I think what's happening is that's not possible if you're going to a traditional office space or a fully fitted out office space because there's a lot of negotiation there of what is it that you require. And how do we get it done? And is this the best way to do it? Is this, by putting your server room here, you're sacrificing on this. Like, are you sure you want to do that? And the client is like, okay, wait, let me think about this. I'll go back to my managerial team and talk about it and come back to you. So it's that process. They're seeing that we're becoming a lot more entrenched in making their office space for the, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or even a year. I think that helps a lot, and that goes back to the consultancy point because before it just didn't exist. You had to ask, the architect, and then the architect just made it, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's like a lot of merger of different, whether it's construction methodologies, et cetera, merging into one to be able to provide a solution to our clients.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin. So my next question is pertaining to the consolidation in this industry, flex spaces and co-working spaces. So if we see the growth which has happened, and especially post-pandemic, I was talking about 25% growth. In fact, in some quarter, it has been more than 40% growth in this flex spaces. And we are at 40 million square feet, as I said at the starting of the discussion, with almost 7 lakh workstation. And in 3 years, probably we are going to be double of this. And with that, there is a lot of organized players are there in the industry, and there are unorganized players also. where we think there is the scope of the major consolidations happening, and what is going to be the, are we going to see the major consolidation happening, or we are seeing that major players are getting added? Because there are almost 20,000 this co-working flex spaces across the world. Out of that, 10% exist in India only. More by end of this year, it may reach 4% plus that kind of this space of the traditional office share. So what do you think in terms of the consolidation happening over a period of time? Sumit?
So, consolidation is a very interesting question, and we have been talking about it since 2019. Pre-COVID, the number of co-working operators, everyone used to give a number, and it used to be a crazy kind of a number, that these are the total number of co-working operators in the country for a nascent industry, 1,000 plus players, and an industry with a very low entry barrier. Now, the way we look at is, and the complex scenario is the build versus buy decision. Yeah. Let's say there are players with 25, 40 odd centers, and then you think about, in a single year, if you are coming out with 40 to 50 odd centers or particular kind of square footage, one is organically building. Should I go on the building organic route, or should I go the kind of a buy route? So that's conundrum so far. Considering the scale, I think a lot of players are taking a view that let's go on a build kind of a route. But with the sector overall becoming extraordinarily mature, or rather, not mature, but at least at a high growth kind of mode, a lot of players will look at consolidating. And that's going to happen. Why also? Every player, if you look at the top 5 players in the country, they have a very different kind of strategy. There are players who are only focused on managed offices category. A managed office category is you pick up a business for only a cohort of, let's say, 300 plus seats. There are players who are only focused on 100 plus or B2B kind of model. There are players who are only focused on B2C model. What we say B2C model is they are focused only on less than 100 seats kind of customers. There are players like us which try to swim across all these segments. Now, naturally, a player which is only in B2B segment would want to acquire a player which is only in B2C segment. So it's bound to happen naturally. The second thing which is going to happen is there are a lot of players which are doing very well in tier 2 and tier 3 markets. This requires a very different kind of skill set. It requires a very different kind of heavy lifting, because supply acquisition in tier 2 markets, it's a task in itself. So a lot of players would see value and synergies in consolidating those kind of players, and people will end up coming up to create a larger outcome for their organizations in form of IPOs and all. So that's my view.
Thank you, Sumit. Yeah.
Just to add on that, if you see any kind of an industry, and especially when the industry just starts, it takes 5 or 7 years for the industry to grow, organically. And then you start seeing the strategic acquisition as a process coming in. What he mentions is absolutely right. Today, if I compare X, which is built versus an acquisition, you will never find a value to an acquisition versus a build. But when you have reached a particular level and you know that in 2 or 3 years I have to go to an IPO or a larger investor pitch, you have to go through the model of an acquisition automatically as a strategy. It depends upon what kind of a multiple you buy the strategic guy versus what multiple you are doing your IPOs or your higher pitch around that. So if you see an arbitrate or you see a value there, a lot of times acquisitions also happens at that junction, to take it up. Acquisition will also happen on the verticals where, you have to be very grounded on this business. It needs, when you are sitting on tier 1, it's difficult to manage a tier 2 or tier 3 cities. So if there is a good player working out of tier 2, tier 3, I think the biggie guys will definitely come in to look at such players to be acquired in the future. So that's something definitely which is going to be in the eyes of the bigger ones in the market on a longer run.
Thank you, Manas. Kushal, my next question is to you. How you think that branding is going to play the major role in the co-spacing, co-working operators, and to completely stand out in terms of the crowded market? What are the value add and this marketing strategy can be adopted by this flex space operator to get the major advantage amongst the competition?
I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
Already a couple of my colleagues have mentioned about tier 2 markets, so I'll come to that a bit later.
Yeah.
As you also mentioned, there are roughly 2,000 odd co-working players in India, and a lot of them are regional players. So if you actually look at it with a microscope, you will come to know that most of them are either a single city or a single center. And again, if you break it down more, you will come to know that most of them are actually owners. So what has happened is actually the traditional landlords have actually moved to a co-working because their cost of acquisition of the real estate is low because they're already sitting on that. So because of that, they are providing customized service also to the client because they are a very small player. So because of that, for the biggies to get into their space is going to be very difficult. So that's why a product differentiation is very important, because that will also help you in creating better brand recall value. And I'm sure I'm talking on behalf of everybody sitting here that most of the time your existing customers are only giving you the expansion plan. So your existing customers themselves are growing by 30-35% year on year. And that helps us to not look outside, other than if we want to look at more growth, yes, we need to look beyond that. But a lot of time our existing customers are only giving us the growth. Coming to the tier 2 cities, which I mentioned, I'll come later. So my branch, where I'm part of, we are currently present in 60 plus cities and in 25 plus states. So we actually become a go-to partner for ease of doing business, because if anybody is looking at expansion, and these are typically your edtech, fintech, any company which is looking at sitting centrally, but need to work on a decentralized model because of compliances, such as GST or other regulatory compliances, look at pan-India solution partners for getting them to get the fastest growth. So startups, we all talk about startups. Startups always are looking at vertical growth. So we help them in achieving the vertical growth. Also, differentiation which is coming over a period of time is customization. A lot of customers are okay and more than happy to work out of co-working spaces. But within that also, they are looking at their own space. So I would say, they're typically like a shop-in-shop model. If you go to a mall, in a mall, you'll go where the cafeteria, the washroom, and all are common. But within that, you'll see a Puma, or you'll see Adidas, or you'll see other stores which are running independently. So within the co-working also, a lot of customers are asking for customization. And another thing where the differentiation also is coming is where people are asking, what more than real estate? What more than co-working can you provide? Yep. So it's very important that we are able to create an ecosystem where you are helping them probably with their accounts and finance, with their hiring, with their compliance, with their business, with providing other services. So these are critical factors which are going to be important for co-working to expand. And yes, there's enough opportunity for each and every co-working as I speak.
Thank you, Kushal. Thank you.
I'd like to add something over there from a branding standpoint. So when you think of the B2B customer and the way that we're shifting now towards the larger corporate MNC managed office solution, for them, I think from a branding standpoint, compliance is super important. Like, it sounds a little dull, but just making sure that you're a provider that they can go to where their eyes shut from a compliance standpoint is a big branding win. And from a B2C point of view, I think it's also, we talked in the previous session a little bit about this generational shift in the workspace, right? We're getting the bulk of the workspace very soon is going to be Gen Z. And for them, it's a little bit about experience. It's also a lot about social responsibility. How do you respond from an ESG standpoint? What are your sort of environmental goals? And that, again, becomes a big branding play, because you want to be known as the organization that is responsible. And that helps a lot with sort of getting those employees of those tenants to advocate for your brand.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there's a very interesting question, so I'll also try to pitch in. You mentioned a point around on Gen Zs. So one of the anecdotes which come in my mind is millennials have become the decision makers and Gen Zs have become the influencers now. So the Gen X, I don't know whether they are, they are just seeing the party, what's happening. Primarily around on branding, any sector which has almost about 1,000 plus operators, brand building or branding is going to differentiate everything. So the genesis starts from the product itself, the kind of, a great product. So that's for granted, everyone over here, would vouch for our products. Internally, how we do for us is the 3 C's primarily work very well for us. The first one is more on, a clarity. Where we are very clear with the customers what kind of product are we pitching. Our positioning is we are a value product. So just to give an example, like we are very clear and we don't have any qualms in saying we are the Toyota Corollas of the market. We don't say we're the Mercedes, we are not the BMWs. Even the premium product we came up with, it's a Toyota Camry. So one needs to be very clear with the moment you are with the customer, you be very clear, this is the product I'm offering to you. So clarity becomes, thing. Second is consistency. So in terms of consistency, the idea is I have currently about 150 odd centers across 17 cities. Can I provide that consistent service to the customers, across every center? Someone moves into our center in Kochi and he expects, get a similar level of service. So if we are able to do that, it creates a brand. The third one for us is a community. What ultimately we are doing for the people who are the community which is working out of center, how are we creating that community that it's more close-knit, people associate with Office or any other co-working as a brand and they feel a bit more sense of belongingness over there. So these are the 3 C's through which we are trying to create a differentiation and drive the move.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you. So my next question is, and probably this is the last question. Looking ahead, what do you see is the biggest opportunity for growth and innovation in the co-working flex office spaces sector, and how you think that operator can capitalize them and benefit from these innovation models? Yeah.
So when we are delving into future, let's look a bit into the past. From 2000 to 2010, was the era of business centers across the globe. The whole solution was more business center oriented. Most of the players, they had, that kind of a DNA. 2010 to, 15 is the scenario where co-working actually started. The movement of co-working actually started with the providing solutions for freelancers, startup communities, and that segment of community is much higher kind of a number across in global markets versus India. In India, the co-working 1.0 probably started in 2014 around, where I still remember in 15 we used to have the centers around in mill compounds in Mumbai, Todi mill compounds, and we used to start thinking how do I look at making my center a bit more cool scenario. And the end audience, we were still focused around on startups and the freelance community. Fast forward now, the adoption with which we had a lot of tailwinds with COVID as well. Now the whole adoption is such that every segment, which is a freelance startup, SME, mid-corporate, large MNC, Indian MNC as well as global MNC, they have adopted and adapted to the whole thing. The solutions which are coming around, which will lead the way forward, are in terms of the flexible workspace, the flexible passes. So let's say if you are a large company, for the namesake, let's say a large IT services company called Cognizant, can you enable your people to work near home across 200 or 300 locations in India? Can people get that choice around? So this is one area where I think a lot of innovation is going to happen. Second, in terms of certain numbers, like you mentioned, Audhesh, around on 40 million square feet going to about 80 million square feet in 3 years, 700,000 seats going to 1.4 million seats in 3 years. Now, what that means is almost 20 to 25 million square feet of leasing is going to happen across co-working on an annual basis, right? Which is almost going to be about 20 to 25% of the overall CRE leasing across the country. So what we are talking about is that the co-working segment is going to be the second largest consumer of CRE in the country after ITES services. So that's a great opportunity. This is the time when the industry is coming up. I think some level of innovations are okay. We don't need to go with overboard around on innovations. We just need to focus, execute, and sit here after 4 years and talk about that 80 million square feet and the large outcomes over here.
Thank you, Sumit. Robin, you want to add?
Yeah, I'll maybe change the angle a little bit. I think because we're a brick and mortar business, the EBITDA is rarely the one I try to look at. You got to look at what your PBT is, because if you don't account for your depreciation and you talk about really high revenue numbers, I think there won't be a future. So I think it's about really figuring out how to increase your profitability. And in real estate businesses, that's a big problem because you have really long timelines, right? Hotel industry, they talk about 10, 15 years, tak to bhul jao, profit baad mein aayega. So I think the innovation lies in how do you figure out your depreciation number going down. And it can't be by making cheaper office spaces. You need to make more long-lasting office spaces, and you also need to provide flexibility. So with sustainability as an added large point that's looming on real estate's head, we need better ways to build. We need faster ways to build. And I can tell you and guarantee you that the way we build right now, anything, forget co-working spaces, is like the Stone Ages. If we do not figure out how to build smarter and with more flexibility in mind, and literally, like, can you move walls in a day's time? Can you think of how that is a green product, true green product that you can use for 50 years? If you don't start thinking about all these questions, I think we have larger problems and the future doesn't look as bleak, as great as one would say. So I think if you can figure out how to innovate in those areas, then I think you can help your EBITDA numbers. And your depreciation numbers. And I think there's a tremendous possibility there push, especially made in India from that point of view. And I think we could really figure out how real estate can change from that perspective.
Good, Robin. It's nice to see that architects are talking about the finances and bottom line of the...
That's a big reason why I got in here.
Bottom line of the...
I wanted to do both.
Yeah. So I think if we are done with the questions, can we invite some questions from the audience?
I think we should get multiple questions because we saved you on time.
Yeah. Do we have some questions from the audience? I think someone is there. Who wants to?
I'm afraid so, no audience questions on that. Would you like to give a concluding remarks, sir?
Yeah. So, thank you, panelists, for a very engaging and enlightening discussion. We have seen that Robin is talking about the post-pandemic effect on the co-working flex spaces and how it has shaped up after this pandemic and the growth which we are seeing in the business. Manas has talked about how it is competing with the traditional office spaces provider, the co-working spaces. Aryoman has talked about how the co-working office spaces has evolved over a period of time in terms of adopting the new practices, technology, and sustainability. Kushal has also talked about this importance of the branding and differentiation and amenities in this flex office spaces. Sumit has talked about the innovation and growth prospect in this co-working spaces, and it is huge. Unlike earlier, it was used by the small entrepreneur and SMEs, and now it is used by the big corporates also for this providing this office space to their employees. Aryoman, you have talked about this how the client have evolved over a period of time, and their requirement has evolved, and new requirements are coming in terms of the wellness and sustainability and amenities. So these are some of the points we have discussed, and it was quite engaging, enlightening a discussion. So with that, I'll hand it over to Bhavna, to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pandey. Ladies and gentlemen, a big, big round of applause for the entire panel. Thank you so much for curating this excellent panel. If I may have the honor of calling upon the Director, InnoFit Systems, Interior Solutions for Co-working Spaces, Mr. Sunil Devnani, to kindly join us and help us with the felicitations. Let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Devnani. Thank you so much. And sir, we'd request you first off to start off with our session chair, Mr. Audhesh Pandey. So requesting you to please be in the center. Thank you, Audhesh Pandey. Ladies and gentlemen, our session chair. Let's give him a big, big round of applause. Thank you so much, Aryoman Langrana. Thank you for your valuable time. Let the applause continue, ladies and gentlemen. Kushal, Bhargava, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Manas Mehrotra, for joining us on this panel. Thank you so much, Robin Chhabra. And thank you so much, Sumit Lakhani. With that, I request all of you to please come in the center, the entire panel, along with sir. If you could be in the center and come in for a group photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, what an excellent curation right there. Let's give them a big, big round of applause.